Hi, everybody. It is Lee Milteer, the Blonde Warrior, here on Grassroots Warrior Network on Rumble. I'm super excited today. We have a great guest. I'm going to tell you all about them in just a second. But I do want to remind each and every one of our viewers and listeners today that I have a gift personally for you. It is called 5 Types of Energy, FIV typesofenergy.com. You can also find me at milteer.com for all my materials. Now, let me tell you about the video series you're going to get absolutely for free. It's worth $100, and you'll be getting one video every other day, and they're 5 minutes long. And the first one is on mental energy, physical energy, financial energy, spiritual energy, and emotional energy. And this is your life currency. These videos are played in churches and schools and businesses all over the place to help people understand that the way you think, the way that you act, everything about you is your life currency. So make sure that you please sign up and get those free videos. Also, a lot of you have been asking about my new book, and it's called Activate Your Inner Power. It's on Amazon. It was a bestseller in 4 categories. And basically what you do is you think of your problem, you concentrating on it just for a second or so, you open the book anywhere, and guess what? There'll be an answer for you. And today our answer is dance with the unknown. And so it's basically about how you can claim the day. Also, a number of you have been asking about my prayer book, which is called The Magic of Prayers, another bestseller on Amazon. I highly recommend that this book and the Activate Your Inner Power be part of your daily routines to give you guidance. Okay, we're going to talk about our wonderful guest today, Trisha Joy Johnson. Let me tell you all about her. She is the founder of Get Back to Basics, which is a movement dedicated to using old school, we need a lot of that, logic and lessons to literally navigate in today's rapidly changing environment. She is a bookkeeper by trade, and she formerly owned a construction company in Texas. She's currently the CEO of Get Back to Basics, Inc. and Joyful Woman content creator. She is also a LifeWave independent distributor, as well as the district treasurer of her local school, which is just south of, and this is the true name of the town, Nowhere, Oklahoma. She says, I'm looking for ways to make my path easier for the next generations by sharing wisdom and insight for those who have walked the road before us. She is a wife, mother, sister, aunt, friend, and a Christian who seeks out the joy in the journey of what she calls life. And she also said, in these times where things are not normal, maybe we can just step back, seek out the things and ways that have helped those who came before us and the lessons of the past that literally will take us into the future. And seeking and searching the common themes in life while we still have folks alive from the greatest generation and who have the unique opportunity now for us to ask them questions and how were they happy? How did they live their lives? So we are very happy to have Joy with us. I call Joy. Her name is Trish, and her middle name is Joy, but she's always so filled with joy. And we're going to talk about today the topic of the middle of confusion and despair lies great opportunity. So welcome, Trish.
How are you today?
I am fantastic. I'm so
Thank you
excited. I was
so
looking
much for
forward to
having me.
My pleasure. You are someone whose videos I deeply enjoy when I watch social media. They are uplifting. They're everything I just talked about giving people hope. So the first question I have is, since our title is In the Middle of Confusion and Despair Lies Great Opportunity. So let's start with, what are the opportunities you're seeing right now that people could start using to not only be a better role model, but to other people around us, but to also help themselves keep the hope that life is going to get better?
I use a simple and quick system in my daily life, and I'll share it just real quickly. First of all, I look up. I know whose and who I am. So for me, that is being a Christian. So I know my faith and I know who I belong to. Secondly, I look down and I am rooted in that faith, and I have built a strong foundation of family and friends and skills that I have, my God-given gifts, talents, and abilities. So that is kind of the foundation that I've built my life on. Thirdly, I look within myself. So what experiences and insight and wisdom have I gained in my 60 years here on planet Earth? And fourth, I look around. Who can I help? How can I serve? How can I be a better member of society, a more productive member of society? But who can I serve? And that brings joy to my life. Just giving a smile or a hug or a word of encouragement, that helps me see what matters most in life. And finally, I look beyond. So what do I want to leave behind in this world when I'm gone? So it doesn't matter what kind of car we drive or what kind of house we live in. It's who we were, how we inspired and influenced people, and what we've left behind in the world. So when I do those few things, that helps me hang on to what matters most. And when we are looking for the things that matter most, that's those investments that we make in other people and what we share with other people. So I was blessed, I think like you were, to be raised on a farm, and I understand the cycle of life. And when we think about that getting back to the basics of what are we going to eat today, what roof is going to be over our head, who do we love, and who are we there for, and who are the people that are there for us, and we kind of build that bubble around us, that helps protect us against this chaos all around us. And chaos, I think, is intentionally being created right now all around us. And that word means great disorder or confusion, a disorderly mess or jumble. And that's the world around us. So I think of my faith and my 5 steps, look up, look down, look within, look around, look beyond. I think of that bubble that I've built around me, and that allows me to just bounce through life, not unintentionally, but just to protect me from all the darts that life is constantly throwing at us. It's wanting us. The world is trying to make us be enemies. So getting back to basics reminds us that we all need each other. We need to be there and support each other. We need to help each other. We need to be greater than the sum of our parts. And we've lost that in this society, especially in the last few years. So getting back to basics for me is a method of using all of the things that we have access to make life simpler, yet more productive.
Oh, so well said and so concisely put. I mean, if everybody just listened to that several times a day, that would be so wonderful. I was taking a little notes, and I wrote down legacy. So I think it's very important that the people who are awake about what's going on, that we are creating, as you say, foundations of one, support for ourselves, because we cannot give to others what we haven't given to ourselves. And also, we also believe that, we have so-called elected leaders, but these people, many of them are not actually leaders. They're persuaders, they're con artists, they're people who are pulling the wool over people's eyes. They're leading them down the wrong path. Some of them. We do have some people who are stepping up to the plate. So, what would your thoughts be to parents with young children about the current educational system? Because all of this darkness has been started originally by how people have been educated. And I grew up in Chuckytuck, Virginia. We didn't have any, insane teachers. I mean, we had teachers we didn't like, but they weren't like trying to hurt us with bad information. So what advice would you give to parents today about the caliber of information they're allowing in their children's environment?
I would encourage parents first and foremost to remember that you want to be the greatest influencer on your children. Don't leave that job to someone else, especially a school. We want to be aware of all the information that is input into our children's brains because they don't have the logic and the reasoning to understand it all. They just take the facts and put them in there and almost believe them as truth or as gospel. So I want to encourage all parents to spend time with your kids. Ask them every day, what did you do at school? What did you learn today? And encourage them to be open and honest with you. So God bless me with a son. I didn't intend to have children, and now I have 5 amazing grandchildren. So that legacy is even more important to me. So I believe that people, for the most part, try to be open and honest, and most people go into teaching and politics and everything. They go into it with good intentions, and sometimes those get skewed. I am blessed, like you said, I work at my local school. I'm the district treasurer there, and I was at a school board meeting last night. So I get to sit in every school board meeting. And in the smaller communities, I think you will find that those people want what's best for not just their kids, but all kids. And I encourage a parent to go to those meetings, school board meetings, open meetings. Go find out what's happening there. Be a part of your community. Don't just drop your kid off at school or put them on the bus and forget about what happens to them 6 to 8 hours every day. So they spend more time at school with those friends, and it's so important to, in the evening, sit down to dinner together as a family. Make sure that the kids have some unwinding time, some downtime, that their mind is open. And I know with my son, who's will be 33 next month, that time was right before bed. So he would have his bath and we'd read the books, and they're just wide open at that time. So as a parent, I would encourage all parents, spend 5 or 10 minutes alone, put those phones away. Technology, put them away. Don't let that be the only influence that your child has. So that's my number one thing. Sit down at the dinner table. You can see ours behind us. My husband and I, we sit down to dinner every night. And I know so many families today have lost that tradition, and they don't pass on that legacy, because what happens at the dinner table, that's what changes our lives. That's what impacts us. And sometimes if you're blessed to have an older relative at dinner, or you go with the grandparents or the great grandparents, if kids are blessed to have those, they soak that stuff in like a sponge and give the child those opportunities. Let them be around older folks. When I was a kid, our church went to the nursing home. Let them spend some time with someone who's lived a life, and let them see that example. Have a garden. Let them understand the circle of life, the cycle of life, the seasons of life, and plant that in them when they're young, because that's what they'll hang on to as they go through their teenage years. So, and if you've got a child that's a teenager right now, it's not too late. Start today. Spend time with them. Put away your phone. Put away their phone. If you go to a restaurant, you see 6 people and 7 phones. So put those away. Make that a policy that you put them in your room, put them in your purse, leave them in the car. Get away from the technology and interact one-on-one with people. And that's what children are missing today.
Oh, so well said. Okay, a few notes. Something came to mind that I read the other day that shouldn't have shocked me, but actually did because I studied the brain so much. Children under 7 years old cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality. And so it's super important that we pay attention to that. But here's something even more shocking. Um, a we think of young adults, that once they hit 18, that they're up and running. The truth is, men brains do not come really on board completely until after the age of 24. 24. Uh, Girls actually brains come of age around the age of 20. Now, we're not just because we're women saying that women, mature faster, but they actually do. women actually process, or females process from four realities at the same time. They a mental, a physical, emotional, and spiritual, all at the same time. That is why women can do so many things. They can cook and hold the baby and talk on the phone and, all these things. Men process information by two ways primarily. There are an exception, but two, which is only mental and physical.
Mm.
They are also absolutely not capable of doing a whole bunch of stuff at the same time. Their brain needs for them to focus very clearly. So as you're saying, I also read this experiment the other day that I was very anxious to tell you about, and I hope you will use it. This family did an experiment for 6 weeks where they had dinner every night by candlelight. There were so all the electricity was off. There was no phones. And they said that their children, including their teenagers, absolutely took 2 or 3 days, because, everybody's a little reluctant to change, but took 2 or 3 days and everybody started talking. Everybody started communicating. Everybody started, bonding, and they weren't focused on this. And the family has said that that is going to be a ritual that as much as they can possibly do this, they're going to always have dinner by candlelight on top of the beauty of it all. And so the kids got very excited of who could light the candles and all these new little rituals that we have the opportunity to ingrain in this, young generation, which is like sponges, as you said. And, if you actually do that, can you imagine in the future when those children are grown and have children of their own, how they might carry on this? Really, it's a sacred time to have dinner together. And I also want to share that I grew up on a farm ranch, and
Mhm.
you know, because of the animals or the weather or things like that, sometimes our dinners didn't get to be but later. But when we did, we always sat down together. I mean, nobody was allowed to watch TV. As a matter of fact, when I was growing up, we got 1 hour a day of television, and it was always what my father wanted to watch, which was, some cowboy show, which we loved. But at dinner, my dad would always ask me, what did I learn today and how could I use it? The other question he would say, he would present situations to me because he was teaching me critical thinking.
Mm.
Yes, he did. He'd say, okay. And he would always take the farm or the part of the ranch with all the herds of cattle and horses and things. And he would tell me a real life problem that our land animals or people were experiencing. And he would say, here's the challenge. And we need some solutions. What do you think we should do? Now, at 7 years old, this is starting to drill into my head of how do you find solutions? And by the way, I'm sure I gave ridiculous, silly solutions at times, but he was very patient, which was a rare thing, but he was very patient during these times. And he would say, well, that's a thought. However, what if, and then he would start giving me a different list of possible solutions and then say, okay, which one would you think would be the most appropriate for this? Now, I don't know anybody since I've been an adult whose parents ever talked to them like this.
Mm.
My father talked to me like an adult from the time I was 7 years old. He actually, at the time before newspapers were so polluted, he actually had me read the newspapers.
Awesome.
By the time I was 12, I had my first business with 37 people working for me. So, by the way, it was all on the farm, and we were, taking care of fields and things like that. And it was always my job to get up at 4:30 in the morning and take care of the horses. So, and we had a 3-acre garden. Oh dear God, did I at the time really dislike that?
Lots of weeds to pull.
A lot of weeds to pull. I mean, I was always, somebody else can do the garden. Let me just do the horses. But um, I this is not bragging. This is just an example of
Mhm.
what I've been able to create in my life because of this foundation. By the way, there were no excuses. There was no try. You're not going to try to go feed the horses. You're either going to feed them or you're not. And there'll be horrible consequences not to do your chores on time because of the repercussions of the animals and things that they had to deal with. So, anyway, I wanted to just share these little tidbit things, in response to some of the things that you're saying. Okay, you made a kind of a joke. It's not too late for teenagers. I have friends who say it's way too late, but let's just go with it's not too late. Tell us some things that people could do to activate a teenager to look at life slightly different from the 5,000 messages, and I'm not kidding, per day an average teenager gets between social media, the news, the negative stuff in school, and all of this bad programming. What can people do to wake them up to there's a different reality we can play in?
Well, I love what you said about the farm, and that is a lesson that a teenager needs to know, especially a city kid. They may not know. There was a survey the other day that the kids were asked, "Where do your groceries come?" And the answer was like DoorDash or Walmart delivery. People don't even know. Kids today don't know. So, as a parent of a teenager, I would first and foremost warn you that they're not going to like it if this is not a routine that you have, if you haven't set the ritual and the tradition of having dinner together as a family. Kids today are so overbooked, it hurts my soul. So we have kids playing baseball or basketball or this away team or that away team or piano lessons. So kids are so booked, and parents do that because they think the best thing is to keep your kid busy, which I see some logic in that. But that's great if they have the opposite, if they have the downtime, if they understand that they don't have to be running 80 miles an hour on a treadmill 24/7. So I would get through the hard part of taking away that phone. Take it away, and that's the rule. You don't have your phone from 5 to 9, or the rest of the day. Once you get home from whatever the rule is, make sure that they don't have that technology and they are only interacting face to face with real people. So my husband took our oldest granddaughter, which we have two bonus granddaughters, a 23-year-old and a 13-year-old that were part of the package with my wonderful daughter-in-law. So we didn't raise them or be around them for their whole life. We met the oldest when she was 15, and my husband took them to their favorite restaurant, her and three of her friends, and it turned out to be a ramen noodle place. And so we thought that's a different mentality because my husband ate a lot of ramen noodles in college. And that's what, you're hungry and you don't have any other food, you go to ramen noodles. But he was just shocked at dinner. The kids, they can't look you in the eye. So many teenagers won't make eye contact. They don't understand. They're nervous to talk to real people. So get your teenager in front of real people and maybe start slow, maybe 15 minutes, work up to 30 minutes. And they will in turn love that. So my son's friends growing up, they always felt that they were not important, that it was the parents' world and the kids were just crowding it up and they were a burden, or they weren't the special gift that they are. Because as a grandparent, you realize it, but as a parent, you don't realize how fast that time flies by. So those 18 years you have your child with you, it will go by so fast. But my greatest joy right now, aside from watching these 5 grandkids become their own people, is the fact that my son and I have such a close relationship because of that time I invested in him, that he will call, if he has to drive. He's still in construction. So if he has to drive from the job site home, he will call and visit with me. And I cherish those moments because he wants my opinion. He wants my perspective. And I did that same thing that your daddy did with you. It's Put them out there when they're young. Give them as many choices as you can, because they don't want to feel like that they're in a prison. A child needs to feel that they have the ability to have some choice in their life. And so many parents regiment them so tightly that they don't have that opportunity to learn how to make decisions. So if your kids wants to wear striped pants and a polka dotted shirt to school, let them. If they want to have crazy hair, let them, because that allows them to have some control over their life. So as they get older and you have to put your foot down. No, you're not going to stay out till 2 a.m. No, you're not going to, go stay the night at that parent's house because I don't trust them. As those decisions that you know are important, where you're going to put your foot down and hold it on the line, then they still have the freedom to feel like they have choice. And that's so important. I was kid sitting an older kid while my boss at the construction company took his older son to college. And my son was 6 at the time. And the girl that we had the pleasure of keeping for a week, she was a teenager, 15 or 16. And she said to me at dinner where we were sitting together, she said, Sean is 6 and he has more power over his life. He's able to make more decisions than I'm able to make at 16. And Sean felt that way. So he felt comfortable coming to us when he was a teenager, because he knew we weren't there to crack the whip. We weren't there to make his life miserable. We were guiding him because we loved him, and we were punishing him when we had to. You lose your privileges, you do whatever. We were punishing him to guide him, not because we were being mean and not because we didn't love him, but understand as a parent that if you make your child mind, if you have consequences to their actions, that's something that's missing in all of society today. There is no accountability and there is no consequences for our actions. So as a parent, when my son was little, they talked about helicopter parents. And a helicopter parent, we're hovering over and making sure I'd let my kid ride his bike to school, but I'm 5 minutes behind him, making sure his bike's on the rack and he got there safely. So that was a helicopter parent. Now they say we have lawnmower snowplow parents. So these parents go through like a snowplow and clear every obstacle out of the way that kid might encounter. So everything goes their way. And we've raised an entire generation of people that think and believe, because that's what they were shown, that the whole world revolves around them. And that's the worst thing we could have done, because it doesn't. We don't allow them to be heard or to have their feelings hurt or to realize that the answer isn't always yes. And we don't give them that power that my parents gave me and your parents gave you, to understand there's more than one way to get things done. There are 7 different solutions to solve this problem. Which one would you choose? And then let them do that sometimes. If it's not going to cause harm to them or others, let them figure out that way doesn't work. There are those opportunities, those learning experiences, and that's what sticks with you. When you figure out that something doesn't work, then you know better next time, but you get that critical and most important skill of learning how to think. So we cannot think for our kids. We have to teach them to think for ourselves. And the number one thing that I wanted to give my son, other than that strong foundation of understanding who he was and whose he was, I wanted him to have the ability to roll with the changes, because life changes on a dime and it changes every single day. We wake up to a different reality every single day. And if you don't have that thought process to go through to understand that there is a solution, it may take me a minute to find it. I may have some wrong answers on the way to that, but there is a way to get what needs to be done and what I want to do done if I put in the time and the effort to do so. That was a powerful thing I learned from my mother and my father, my grandparents and great grandparents, is that you can do anything if you're willing to put the work in and the time in to do it.
Oh, I'm telling you, Trish, I think you really should start writing a book on raising kids. I think that might actually monetize. Okay, a couple of things. I guess it was about 6 or 8 months ago, I do speak at schools for free. I offer myself to come in, and I don't mind telling you, high schools are daunting to speak at because they slump down in their seats, they pull hats over their eyes, they look at their phones, they're completely not interested. So I get off the stage, walk into the audience, flip some kid's hat off and say, "Set up and pay attention," which shocked everybody. And the teachers in the back are going, because they
You
can't
go,
do that.
girl.
But
That's what they're doing.
I'm leaving in an hour. I could do that. So that day they also asked me if I would speak while I was already there to first, second, and third graders. And I was actually terrified because I couldn't even fathom what on earth could I teach them. So actually what I taught them was how to shake hands with each other and look each other in the eye and actively listen. Well, a couple of months after that, I got a big package in the mail where the teachers in the school put together the mail that they had gotten from these kids' parents on how. So the homework assignment for the kids was they had to go home and they had to shake their mother and father's hands and their brothers and sisters and everybody, and had to look them in the eye and say their name and how to do that. And I mean, the simplest little thing.
Mhm,
They got so much response from that.
mhm,
Then they sent me in a, like a little notebook version of all these letters. I was so blown away that one, the kids didn't know how to do this at all. They didn't know how to look people in the eye or shake their hand and mean it. And, I just taught them honest, the most basic little things. The other thing I wanted to mention is that parents have got to cut off the news
mhm.
when the kids are around. Kids are suffering more anxiety than any other time in history. And why would that be? Because deep down, the authority figures are only spreading fear,
Mhm,
which leaves a child to feel like, I'm doomed. I have no future.
mhm,
Nobody's gonna, be there for me. I don't know how to deal with this. Adults cannot deal with this much fear that's happening in the media every day, much less a child that's just having their brains form. It's not only creating anxiety, it's creating everything you're saying where they won't look at you, they won't talk to you, and all those kind of things. And I would like to suggest to parents, instead of saying punishment, to say consequences. There are consequences if this isn't done. Uh, Not that punishment isn't what it is, but if we can change the verbiage sometimes, where punishment sounds like I'm going to punish you, where consequences are, you've created a reality that now you have to realize the consequences of that reality by breaking the rules, whatever. So I had heard that from someone I had interviewed recently. Then they were talking about the languaging to use with children, and that consequences was, a good substitution. So I thought I would pass that on. All
Love
right.
that.
So, are you getting pushback, Trish? Are you getting any pushback from people about this message that you're so
No.
joyfully?
No, I'm not. And I began making daily live Facebook videos on the day that they declared the national emergency, which was my son's birthday. His birthday is March 14th. And so I think March 13th was the day that it was declared in 2020, the national emergency. And I've journaled my whole life. And when this thing happened in 2020, I didn't have the words, which shocked me because I always have words. And And so I started making these videos for my grandkids because I just wanted to let them know that even though they told us the world had stopped spinning, the world had not stopped spinning. And so I started making these videos, and I thought, well, it's still going on now, and I've made almost 1,500 live videos. And I'll say, well, when I get to this number, I'm going to stop. And when I get to that number, and I've had a friend that I've now made in Africa, and she said, I'm so grateful that you come on and share that message every day and share a scripture. And so I have, from here in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, there's a little post office they had when I was in high school, and they named it Nowhere, Oklahoma. So I am smack dab in the middle of the country, 4 miles south of nowhere. And a lady in Africa heard my message. And so I have had days where I think, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. Sometimes it's a quick blip. Sometimes I ramble on. Sometimes I just have a thought or a word, a message that God's put on my heart, that if I hear something 2 or 3 times, that's what I'm going to talk about in my video today. And I have been encouraged by people I don't even know that makes a difference. So that's my reminder for parents, for kids, for each and every one of us. We don't have to change the world. We change lives one at a time. And that light, that spark that we have, that we connect to that. I love the sparklers at 4th of July. You connect your sparkler and they both just explode out. Just something as simple as a smile. Go through your day. That's my encouragement. How can we change someone's day today? So if you have little kids or teenagers, and it's probably not as safe as it used to be. My son at his school had late Fridays. So on Fridays, we went and ate breakfast. And there was a group of old men that had coffee together. And he would talk to these men. Their wives said, we're retired. And they said, you have to leave at 7 in the morning and we don't want to see your face till noon. And one of them said that they had a sign over the door. The wife said, retirement, half the money, twice the husband. And so they gathered together, but they talked to all the kids that came in. So now that I'm older, I can go to a coffee shop, or I can go to the Burger King and sit and visit with the people. But on that Friday, we took a meal to somebody who was homeless. They were usually sitting outside. And so we would get some food. And my son found out that some of the homeless people had college degrees. Some of the homeless people were there by choice. They didn't want to be on the grid. They were there by choice. So let your kids be exposed to someone who's different than them. And hopefully we get that at churches. Hopefully we get that at school. Hopefully we get that in different areas. My son was blessed to go to a school where the poorest kids in the town that we lived in Texas, and the richest kids and the middle class, they had all kinds there. The other schools were, this was in the poor neighborhood, that was in the rich school, but he was blessed to go to that school where he saw both sides. So don't let your children think that they're better than anyone else. Don't let them assume, because we are all created equal in the eyes of God. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. We all have the same ability to make a good life or to make a bad life. And we can have horrible things happen to us, but don't use that as an excuse. And that's a trend I see now with the parents who snowplowed their kids' way through life. The kids now are adults and life is not perfect, and they're blaming their parents. And once your child is an adult, no longer accept blame, except in extreme cases. They have the ability to make those choices for themselves. They have the ability to create the life they want. You're not obligated to support them the rest of their life, and please don't do it. Don't enable your children to take bad behavior and lack of accountability and consequences into their adult life. Because once we're done with our kids and we put them out in the world, the rest of the world has to deal with them. So make sure that you understand that giving in to them every minute of every day for 18 years is not going to give them the tools and the equipment and the mental fortitude that they need to get through adulthood. And that's not going to give them the tools that they need to be a husband or a wife or a parent. That's not going to set them up for success. So we have parents who think the greatest thing they can do is make sure that their kid's life is rosy and pleasant all day, every day. And that's the worst thing we can do. that is the absolute worst thing we can do. So let them suffer those consequences.
I completely agree. I had posted recently about, if you serve people too much, you drown yourself, basically. And that we have a culture of rescuing people who either won't take action or took the wrong action because they're not really paying attention. They want other people to bail them out. And I always say, you set a precedent if you bail someone out enough that now not only do they expect it, but they resent you eventually for bailing them out. It's a great disservice. I definitely grew up with, there were consequences for misbehavior, and there were consequences, good consequences for, stepping up to the plate, doing the right thing. But we had a sort of a no excuse rule where I live. There's no excuses that the animals aren't fed and taken care of on time. There's no excuses. So there's a hurricane. Those animals are in the barn. They must be taken care of. There's just this whole, as you say, wave of programming of protecting children, and life is not going to protect them. I also wanted to mention the whole process of catching people doing things right. So when we have people in our life that we are influencing, because we are influencing them, I've just noticed that that little thing that we can do of, oh, little Johnny, thank you so much for, picking up your plate and your utensils from the dinner table, and, helping with cleaning up. It's so appreciated. That kind of catching people doing things right. No one ever gets enough of that if it's really sincere and true. So I think we have to also remember uh, that giving our children experiences versus material things is a better show of love. I have some friends who have an extended family, sort of like the Brady Bunch. She had a bunch of kids, he had a bunch of kids, then they got married, and then they had a really big bunch of kids. And with all these children, it was very challenging to give materialistically the way that some families do. So they talked about it regularly. We're not buying materialistic things.
No.
We are going to create experiences together to remember forever. So their money, for instance, everybody got a little teeny Christmas gift, but they would really save their money to do something as a family, maybe little small trips or day trips or things like that. And I do want to share with you how much I believe in this. Um, we were poor growing up, but we still got things for Christmas, and not big things, but a lot of pajamas and stuff like that. But if that's all you've ever had, that's kind of all you're expecting. But the thing that I remember actually the most about my parents is once a year they took us out of school and we went to the state fair. So they literally let us play hooky to go to the state fair. I will never forget those days that we went to the state fair, and it was a 1 day thing. And I mean, it was 2 hours away from our house and no big deal. But that really solidified to me how much more important an experience is versus material things. And I really am shocked, amazed, and stunned at 16-year-olds getting brand new BMWs or Mercedes or any kind of new car, to be honest, and that there was no work, no chores, no nothing. I'm also noticing that instead of conversations with the family, the kids are texting upstairs. They're texting their mother to bring them a glass of water.
Oh, no.
Oh, I can imagine what my parents would have said to that. Like, well, you'll just have to, die of thirst, because that's never going to happen unless you're really sick. So this is insane, stupid behavior that is poisoning the children's mind forever, of entitlement and no responsibility. And life is definitely going to be very tough for those kids. I have a publishing company, as you know, and I am always looking for great assistants and people to work for me. I have stopped actually hiring people under 30 for the most part. I have one exception, just because they didn't want to come to work on time. They always had excuses. If I gently said to them, "This is not acceptable that you're late," and "Oh, you're picking on me," I'm like, I'm asking you to honor the commitment you made when I hired you, and they don't. I have to let them go.
Yeah.
And I could go on and on hours about stories I have that
Mhm.
is so terrifying of how are these, unless these kids go to work for huge organizations, let's just pick on Google, for example, or Apple, where they actually pick them up in buses, to get them to work. They do their laundry, they feed them the whole time that they're there. One, those companies aren't going to make it in the long run. And the people who have lived like that, expectations, that's just not how
Way
the
up high.
world
Yeah.
is. And our last question, because we could talk forever, maybe I can have you back to talk about this in other ways, but I really, when I speak to high school kids and kids in general, I always talk about being an entrepreneur. And do you know that most kids don't know what an entrepreneur is? They literally have no idea what an entrepreneur is. So first I have to start with a sort of an example of what is an entrepreneur and how I've always been an entrepreneur, and that the freedom that comes from knowing that you're going to generate your, you know, you're not off the grid, but in a way you are off the grid. I'm not depending on a company that could go down or disappear or fire me or make me retire. I'm depending on myself. So tell me your thoughts about helping kids want to have a more, whether they become an actual entrepreneur or not, but they get that spirit of self-reliance.
I think you start young, like you did. A kid that's 2 years old can help carry the laundry to the bedroom to fold it up. You don't want to give them a glass, but you can let them take a bowl. Or my grandkids, when they were little, they wanted to help fold the clothes, so we'd get them out of the dryer and take them to a bed and fold the clothes. They'd want to put the dryer sheet in or put them from the washer. I'd hand them to them and they'd put them in the dryer. So make the child understand that they're a part of the family as early as you can. Make them understand that we're a team, we work together, and each of us is important, and give them those chances. Give them the chores to do, and give them an allowance and let them spend that money. You get to save your allowance all month, and we go to the toy store. You can choose to save it. I always made my son, he had to give some, he had to save some, he could spend some. So you have to teach them that. They don't pick up on it. And that's one of the big basics that high school needs to bring back. We need to bring back civics. We need to bring back budgeting. We need to teach them how to live life. So we don't need to create people that want to change the politics in our life. We need to create people who know how to read and how to write and how to do math and how to get an apartment, understanding it's not this car that somebody's going to hand you. And my son had to work. I had to work and pay for my car. My son had to work and pay for his car. And he thought we were those awful parents because I have a video of my son for maybe, and it's Christmas time, and aunts and uncles, everybody's there, and he's the only kid at the time, and he has all these presents to unwrap, but he wants to play with the box that a little plastic sled came in to go slide down the hill near our house. And that was such a powerful message for me, that kids don't need all that stuff. They don't want all that stuff. They can't process all of that stuff. They need one or two 3 tops, things that they play with. Rotate them out, go to a used store, buy a toy, and then give it away. Take it to process that. We have kids that have rooms lined with to the ceiling of toys, and they can't make that decision. It's too hard for them. So narrow down what your child has to focus on and allow them as young as possible to understand. That's how they're going to become an entrepreneur, is they've picked something, they've stuck with it, they find out what interests them, and don't allow your child to just be overwhelmed with all the stuff, all the tech, all of the negativity, even all of the positivity. Let them have room to think. And that's how we become entrepreneurs, is when we've been taught how to think and we've been given the space and the time to think. So that's what we need to be giving our children. Nothing that money can buy will help them become an entrepreneur. What will help them is that ability, the adaptability, how they know how to change. They can change and are willing to, and they understand accountability, consequences, and that will enable them to receive the rewards that come from doing a job well, and that satisfaction that comes from being able to take care of yourself, being responsible, and being a productive member of society. And that's what every kid needs. That's what every adult needs. We need to know that we're needed. We need to know that we're appreciated, and we need to know that we matter. And when we have those 3 things, we're going to be successful at whatever venture we step into. But we will be the next leaders. We will be raising the next leaders. And I want to say that about our political communities. The people at church, when they say the prayer, they'll say, we're praying for our leaders. Those folks are not our leaders. They're our employees. We hired them to do a job, and they're not doing it very well. So start raising your children. Start influencing your grandchildren. Start, if you don't have kids or grandkids, start influencing the youth of your community to let them know that one person can make a difference and one person does matter, and we all can be that person.
Well, we're going to wrap it up with those fabulous, famous words from you. So, folks, look, Trish, how can people get in touch with you should they want you to come speak for, their groups or things like that? How can they find you?
I can be found at joyfulwoman.com. I can also be found on Facebook at Trisha Joy Johnson. And I believe my Instagram is also Joyful Woman. And I would be excited to talk. I have, like I said, 1,500 videos. So I love to share this message, because if we don't have hope, we don't have anything. But find joy in every single day. So again, you can find me at Joyful Woman, and that's with 2 L's.com, and find the joy every day in your life. And I thank you, Lee, for 30 years for bringing joy and making me think and inspiring me. From the time I first saw you in a blue cornflower business suit, you have been a hero to me as a businesswoman, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life. And I thank you so much for inviting me here today.
Thank you. I was 12 then, right?
Yes, I thought you were only like 10 and a half. So
I love you too. Okay, folks,
love
don't
you.
forget, come get your free gifts at 5typesofenergy.com. And you can find me, of course, at milteer.com. And we'd love to know your thoughts about our program today. Please pass it on to those who could really benefit from it. And we're going to call it a wrap. So thank you so much, everybody. This is Lee Milteer from the Blonde Warrior. See you next week.